following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. The Comfortably Zoned Radio Network presents The Gall of the Man. And now, the galling man himself, Ralph Zig Tyko.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am the man with the gall of the man. I've heard that all my life on one level or another. I thought I'd name my podcast that expression. And I'm Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. We're coming to you from the 420 studio, and it is in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco in the northern part of the great state of California. And as is my wont, I get to talk to some of the most interesting people on the planet, for crying out loud. No exception today. Coming back to the microphone is my buddy, I guess. We become acquaintances, fast friends, if you will. I'm going to try to analyze that for you because he's Jack O'Halloran, and he's got one of the most eclectic backgrounds in history. You're a Renaissance man, Jack. Welcome back.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Yeah, we talk a lot about a lot of things. When I say you're a Renaissance man, you are a former pro football player, contending boxer. I don't know what the rank actually was. You were in the top 10 contending boxers, played a feature role as an actor in the movie Superman, and you're an author. You're writing a book called Family Legacy, about your family, and it's an extended family. We've talked about it in the past. Some of you listeners are new to this broadcast, so let's go back a little, explain what I mean by your extended family, and tell us a little bit about your book.
The book is, in essence, people do. I had a father who was a very infamous individual, Albert Anastasia, who was one of the premier dons of his time, and back in the day when it meant something, when men of honor really existed. And people have done so many Hollywood versions of what they call organized crime with shoot 'em up, bang, bang. And so we've written a book that, in essence, tells how the government and industry and organized crime and unions were all partners for a lot of years, and how a lot of the illicit monies that were supposedly made were funneled back into the growth of society, how the unions were formed and jobs were given out to make sure people had a way to work. Different companies like General Electric, Westinghouse, Sears and Roebuck, all the insurance companies were funded by monies that came from these so-called criminals. So it's a different look on where people really were and how things existed and the way things worked.
Okay, after having talked with you like 4 or 5 times now, long interviews, I suspect that when you refer to this partnership between society and I don't know what you like to be called, mafia, the family, this Cosa Nostra, whatever it is, you always seem to hint that it isn't in the past tense that you're referring to, that this still exists today. There's still that partnership, that it goes on as before, except it's, I'm going to quote, legit. Would you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, there's a lot of people that went what you would consider legitimate. I mean, what is legitimate? And and what pretext do you take the word legitimate?
That's exactly what I meant. I put it in quotes because it is just a piece of rhetoric that can be interpreted by anybody to meet their own needs at the time.
Exactly. And, so the unions have been infiltrated by the government because they didn't want any partners out there. There's a lot of things that weren't exactly the way they were, but there's still remnants of it around. There's still, people went legitimate as far as not have to look over their shoulder because they're not really doing anything of any criminal activity. They still are keeping control of certain things to help people on a beneficial manner. The things that people get thrown into, and the seduction of money has taken certain people who were supposed to be men of honor to slide backwards into the world of drug world, where there's a very lucrative situation, different types of criminal activities that were frowned upon that people do because of lucrative money assets, even though they don't realize that the time frame of their existence is short. These people that have these high roller attitudes and are making money hand over fist, maybe it lasts a year, maybe it lasts 3 years. 5 years is a long-term deal before they're either dead or in jail. But in the interim of that, there's a lot of people that are harmed, and a lot of us that come from the world of omerta and the familia world really were not conducive to that. We didn't like seeing people and families torn apart and harmed by the drug world. But certain people branched off into it because, like I said, it was a very lucrative thing. People forgot how to make money, and a lot of that was assisted by government. I mean, there's a lot of tentacles that go around the block that people really don't ever take a look at how things have progressed to be such a magnitude of mannerisms that people's mentalities have been changed and bent and thrown away. And, who's more of a bigger criminal than the pharmaceutical industry?
Oh,
themselves.
Right up there with government.
And they control.
And right up there with government, and we talked about this on our last conversation, was how the church, not the sheep that go to church, I'm talking about the hierarchy of the church, feeds right into it as well. You told a very amusing story about how some people got their penance in the old days. Last time, I invite people to check that out on YouTube. Incidentally, all of our offerings at Comfortably Zoned Radio Network are archived on YouTube. So please check them out and subscribe. It's a good station to be a part of, as Jack will attest. Jack, you hinted at something again. This is weeks ago. You kind of know Trump.
Donald's a good person. I mean, Donald Trump is he's a businessman, all right? And as far as being a businessman, can he help the business of producing again in this country? I believe so. Can he bring back industry that creates jobs and puts things back in place? I believe that to be very true. I believe that he can.
Has he been running the government much like, no pun intended, Donald Trump, and your dad he kind of a Don? Is that one of the things that you admire about him?
I wouldn't say that officially. I think that Donald has his version. I think he has his version of business, how business should be run, and he feels that the government and the country needs to go back to creating the all-American way. I mean, you know, when people first came to this country through immigration, they thought the streets were were lined with gold because they had opportunities that they could freely go after. They could create businesses, they could create jobs, they could create a living for themselves in a legitimate fashion. You understand?
Now wait a second. That expression, "the streets are lined with gold," is something that they believed when they were in the old country. All immigrants. I'm Jewish. Family. Because when they came to this country, they found out they weren't lined with gold, and that this.
You have to understand how that expression was broadened. Okay, they were lined with gold to the point that you could come here with nothing and create something. That you had the freedom to create.
Yeah, but you had to line it with gold. It wasn't lined with gold. It was if you chose to do that when you got here, or you did have the opportunity, but
choice was yours. You had that choice. In the countries they come from, they didn't have that choice. So the gold line with gold is a metaphor that's probably taken way out of context, but in essence, it really isn't, because if you get down to thinking about it, they could create a gold lining for themselves, you know, to be able to have the freedom to pick up and start a business, or to be able to work hard to create a family and to create a living and to create an existence much freer than you had where you came from, was a golden opportunity.
It was indeed, and it turned out to be great for some and not great for others. We've progressed, and I'm putting that in quotes because you could say we've regressed to the point where there's an expression that appalls me. It's called the working poor. Now, you tell me, Jack, how could a man or woman gainfully employed working 40 hours a week, or 40 hours a week, not be able to take care of themselves to the point where you have to have two people working in the family and not by choice, but by necessity. You're identified Johnny Lunch Bucket, who goes to work every day carrying a lunch pail, works hard, gives his or her all, and is identified as the working poor, can't buy a mortgage, can't afford a great apartment, this, that, or the other thing. It's disgraceful. Elaborate on that.
It's going backwards. You know, like the fact that if you go back into the 50s and into the Eisenhower administration era, okay, the dollar was worth 86 cents. You could walk into a store with a dollar bill and come out with something, okay? You can't do that today. Now, here goes era again. Now, you know, in the 50s, this country started, and people don't really look at what the reality of what is really going on around them. You know, when we were kids, if you got in trouble, your neighbor was there for you. The people in the block were there for you. People picked up and helped each other, okay? And then all of a sudden, in the 50s, it's infiltrated into a thing called a welfare, which is a version of socialism. And when welfare came in, people were being given checks by the government, and all of a sudden neighbors weren't helping neighbors any longer. They became individual numbers, non-entities.
Right.
freedom of jumping over the railing and shaking someone's hand or conversations or interfacing was starting to deteriorate to where people were afraid of their existence in their homes. When I was a kid, we never locked.
You said welfare, which is socialism. That gives socialism a very, very bad name. Socialism is the police, the libraries, the garbage, etc. That's socialism.
It says that the government
communism. Why should the government taking care of people to make sure that there's that people aren't starving, that kids are getting a meal before they go to school, and that's socialistic characteristics. Why does that get such a bad name?
Because what are you giving up for that? In other words, keeping people poor enables socialism to work better. Okay? Capitalism and democracy says I'm a free man. If I want to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, if I want to better my education, if I want to better my existence for my children to have a better existence, then I'm free to do that.
Well, you are if there weren't corporate greed that
that's where socialism comes in.
One job. Why can't you just work one job and be successful when the leaders of the corporation, the chairman of the board, makes 450 times more hourly rate than you make?
Hold on. Explaining. See, you're what you're talking about is explaining a basis of socialism. In other words, one entity is controlling the financial power and keeping another entity under thumb to where they're not getting a fair share of the wage. And now you have different entities who are discriminatingly taking jobs away from parts of the country. We do not produce like we eat. How much manufacturing is left in the United States?
Very, very little.
Very little? Very little manufacturing is left? Where's the auto industry at? Is it in the United States? No.
No, it isn't.
Where's the IT industry at? Is it in the United States? No.
Well, you know what is in the United States?
When Europe opened up, when the curtain came down,
Silicon Valley and the computer stuff, and which is developing knowledge, and we could manufacture, but you can't manufacture knowledge, and that's.
Let me show you something. Let me give you an example of something. Have you ever been to Europe?
Yes.
Have you been to Czechoslovakia?
No.
Prague?
Been to London, basically. Brussels, little Paris.
Here you go. Let me show you something. When the curtain came down, the European people, and I've spent a lot of time in Czechoslovakia and different countries, Romania and stuff, and when the curtain came down, people in Czechoslovakia are very bright people. And when socialism was communism ruled there, their educations were limited. They were forced into certain elements of education. When they took their freedom back, they opened up their minds to the IT world. And a lot of the IT business went there because, and here's the reason why, they worked 7 days a week. In America, we don't work 7 days a week. We work 5 days a week now, and then those 5 days, people really don't pay attention on Monday because they're coming back from a weekend. Tuesday, they're just revamping themselves. So Wednesday's a great work day. Thursday is a half-ass work day because they're already starting to think about the weekend. So we make maybe 3 days a week out of the week, where other countries are working 7 days a week and accomplishing a lot more in different fields because of the diligence that they do. Okay? And that's
so
what
you're saying is that we are getting more out of life. We're combining work I mean, you work 7 days a week. Unless you love it and it's your passion, your life pretty much sucks.
Yeah, well, that really, if you enjoy doing what you're doing, okay? Like
Right.
they used to have a saying in Detroit, the Wednesday car was the best car to ever get. Guys in Detroit used to tell me, if you ever buy a car, Jack, look at the date that it was made. Because, again, Mondays, people on an assembly line are not paying attention to what they're supposed to be doing. Tuesday, Wednesdays was a great car day, or Thursday, maybe possibly, but Fridays they were already out the door for the weekend. So they weren't paying attention to certain things. So different little niches that car problems that people have came because certain things weren't totally done.
Why weren't they paying attention? Well, maybe they were so inebriated over the weekend because that's their escape, that they came in Monday and didn't do well. Well, you could spend some money and some time invest that money as to what makes these people have to escape their lives so much to become inebriated so that they don't work well on Monday.
It wasn't like that in the 50s, 40s, 50s, and early 60s. Then it started to change because people were working, but they were arguing at work because they weren't getting the just due that they felt they were supposed to get financially.
Well, I'll tell you what, they weren't.
What set that up
was Reagan. When Reagan broke the unions, that did it for the working man and woman. You never heard the expression "working poor" before Reagan shut down the air traffic control union. Am I correct?
Well, you had a president called Carter who changed a lot of things when he changed it around to people that were, if you were an airline stewardess and you were over a certain age, you were allowed to come back and go to work. If you were 60 years old and you really couldn't do the job, but you were allowed to be back there again. They deregulated. They deregulated a lot of things in the country and different job patterns and stuff, which there's so many changes that happen in industry and so many changes that happen through government push and so many changes that happen in the rise of economy and not the same level of rise in wage payment, okay? To where, like you said earlier, a guy works 40 hours, but he has a hard time. He doesn't have the privilege of getting that luxury apartment. He has a hard time taking care of his family. People used to say to me,
that's pretty incentivizing for me. In other words, if I were that working person, that wouldn't encourage me to work harder.
Well, some people worked harder because they knew they could succeed real easy if they were given a door to open up and do it. But a lot of those doors have been shut down to where people don't have. You can't go to try to be a small businessman and go to a bank and get a loan today. Try to be a big businessman and go to banks and try to get loans today for a very good industry. Okay.
So are you hinting at the fact that sometimes some of these big and small companies are still helped out by the familia? They are. Yeah. Okay. All right.
The relationships are there. If the relationships are there, I mean, if you go back in history, people never accumulated huge amount of wealth without help of other people helping them along the way, helping their company.
Well, last time we talked, you mentioned Lee Iacocca, and you alluded to the fact that he was pretty much.
Good example.
That's a good example, and that wasn't that long ago. Can you think of anybody, and can you affirm my theory that there are people high up in government right now, high up in government, that are helped by your family.
You know, when you say high up in
Tally
government,
told me, why don't you ask this guy some questions? For crying out loud.
When you say high up in government, okay?
I say highest up in government, but
let me show you something.
I was saying.
Let me just show you something.
I watch him. It is very much Don-like, and where does he get the balls to do that if he doesn't have backing?
Well, okay. His father could never have gotten the monies and the things that he did without the help of people, okay?
Of course, because New York real estate, that is known. So why don't people just connect the dots and see this? This is a man who has a family history of needing help for one reason or another. People aren't traditional ways. They're not going to loan people money who go bankrupt 4 or 5 times. So is he getting help from Russia? Is he getting help from, it comes to mind.
I don't believe it. All this rhetoric about him being connected with Russia, and that, I think that's a bunch of bull. Knowing that side of the world, no. I mean, you got to understand that, like we had this conversation once before. You had a guy called Jimmy Hoffa, okay? Mm-hmm. Jimmy Hoffa puts together people and gives them respectability and gave them a way of living that was far beyond anything in their wildest imagination. You had truck drivers originally that worked 16, 20 hours a day, loading trucks, unloading trucks, driving them, driving without sleep, trying to make, and for minimum wage. They were making no serious money. Hoffa came in and put the Teamsters together, and he organized something that gave people credibility to where there was lawyers that quit practicing law because they drove trucks over the road. They were making as much money as they were in the law business, and they were out in the fresh air and the sunshine, and they loved it. And they never had to touch a piece of freight. All they did was drive a truck and drop a trailer off. Okay? So that organization, he was targeted because he controlled a lot of votes, as the unions did across the country. They controlled a lot of votes. When you stop and think of how in the 20s, I mean, there was a guy out of Chicago who was probably one of the finest lobbyists that ever walked the face of the earth. And because of that, there were a lot of the unions were started out of the Chicago area because this guy was familiar. He was from Wales. The Welsh people had the unions under their wing a lot better intelligence-wise. He started a lot of things in this country for the Teamsters, for iron workers, for different unions, lobbied for them and everything else. And his name was Humphreys. They called him the Camel. And he was a brilliant guy. And he was not, was he a gangster? Sure he was a gangster because he organized union votes. They controlled the vote in a lot of places. They put Hoffa, the government infiltrated the Teamsters and put Hoffa in jail because they didn't like the way that he controlled too many votes in the country. If Jimmy Hoffa liked...
Hey, by the way, I formed my question carefully. I asked you about Russia, and you said... Russia or the Mafia or a combination of the both. So you basically eliminated Russia as a place where you thought that Trump was getting help. So given everything...
What kind of help are you talking about?
I'm talking about backing. I'm talking about backing in the manner that you described the other day in corporate situations where people don't cooperate. His speech the other day about Cohen's father-in-law, the threats and what have you, was very reminiscent of movies that I've seen about, backroom stuff where, hey, you're going to make it happen my way, or we're going to make it happen your way. Which do you choose? That kind of thing. I got the chills to that. And I'm wondering, because you said you've met this man, and you make no premise about being very well connected, a made man, and your whole life has been that. A, what circumstances did you meet the man? And B, is there a wink and a nod that goes on between Trump and organized crime to this day? That's a tough question. As tough as I can get, Tally.
Let me say this to you. Where anywhere in industry or in government is there not a relationship between something that was a total relationship for years? How could that relationship totally be broken away? It can't be, because it was infiltrated too much. Now, is it as pure as it used to be? No. Is it more corrupt? Absolutely. Is it not honorable like it was? Absolutely. Okay? Is there still ties worldwide? You understand, organized crime is just not in America. You got to go around the world here. It's still, everybody has their own little names for things, but the implication of certain people have been in existence for hundreds of years.
Yeah, because there's an awful lot of mainstream people, if you ask them a question, is the mafia, that's no longer, that was wiped out a long time ago, and RFK,
they're talking about street level things that drugs created, that different changes created, that people got fed to people because they wanted publicity in the media. There's all kinds of different types of what you call criminal activity that gets turned over. Okay, you have so many people in jail that don't belong in jail, but they're in jail for crimes that, in fact, excuse me, I'm a believer that our penal system has created more criminals than it helps.
Well, as a cannabis activist all my life, I will tell you that there's so much truth to that.
There's people that got locked up.
I will tell the
jail that don't belong
there. That's a perfect example of
exactly. It. 100%. And then you have what they call 3 strikes, you're out. So if you get busted 3 times because of marijuana or something, all of a sudden now
that 3 strikes you're out thing is violent crime. So you can't get you on 3 strikes for marijuana. And as a matter of fact,
it depends on what happens in the marijuana case and who got hurt.
It becomes a violent crime in the marijuana case. But then again, that's how much of that is trumped up by the individual prosecutor.
How much is a lot of things trumped up? How much are a lot of things trumped up? I mean,
right.
You gotta take a look at wow, man. How do you explain this? You got to take a look at a lot of different things that were done and changes that were made that created people to turn. Men want to feed their families.
Mm-hmm.
And, a guy used to say to me one time, I'll never forget this when I was a kid. Somebody said, boy, you guys in the street guys, man, you're really tough guys. I said, let me tell you something. You know what a tough guy is? A tough guy is a man that gets up every morning and goes to work and brings a paycheck in every week and makes sure there's food on the table for all of his family. That's a tough guy.
It's the working guy, right?
That's a tough guy.
That's the heroes The heroes.
That's a tough guy.
Unfortunately, the ball players, basketball players, it's the working guy that is the hero, or the single parent that does it alone, man or woman, keeping it together.
When I was a kid, I always worked. I always had jobs. Whether I needed to do that or not, I did it because, first of all, I had to, because you had to have a day job. We call it a day job, okay? If I was doing other activities at night and stuff like that, I had to have a day job. Legitimate.
Yeah.
Okay?
Hey, speaking of that, let me ask you, Jack, are you at peace with everything? You've had some experiences that you probably would have chosen not to have if you could live it all over again. Am I correct?
I'm 75 years of age. I've seen a lot of changes. I've seen a bunch of changes, and a lot of changes I don't like. I've seen a lot of changes. I've seen a lot of people harmed unnecessarily. I've seen a lot of things happen in our society that doesn't make me a very happy person. I see, when I was a kid, there was a better relationship with different law and order factors and everything. There was different. There were different relationships with when you were a street kid fighting street kids. There was the word respect was amongst people. We don't have the word respect in our society any longer. People don't respect themselves. How can they respect somebody else?
Okay.
Ever stop and think about that?
I understand what you're saying.
How many people can you look at in your life right now? Right now, how many people can you look at and say, that's a man of honor, or a man that honors his word, that lives by respect? That man is a respectful individual. How many people do you know like that?
Well, I'm blessed to have my extended family of folks, so I can say a bunch of them.
You're fortunate.
I am.
You can say a bunch of them. You're very fortunate.
Absolutely. I have people around me at this network, in my personal life, who do have that type of integrity, and I do. But I don't see that in the real world. I've created that specifically.
That's what I'm asking. You look around you. Look and see what you see. How many people? How many people actually help other people? It's amazing. I go to restaurants and stuff like that, and people say to me, "Why do you tip people so well in restaurants?"
Mm-hmm.
And I have a very simple answer for that. My mother, when I was a kid, she was a waitress. And we controlled the Bartender Waiters Union for a long time in the Jersey, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area.
After that,
people work very hard for what they're doing. So why should you not honor what they do? Because they're not making any money by an hourly wage, right? So if they're giving you the service that you're asking for, and everything's a polite manner and everything, why should you not compensate them accordingly?
Well, I think there's something wrong with a business plan, an overall business plan that allows that. I think if there weren't such corporate greed at the top. Am I right?
I can remember.
They could pay these workers enough, and that as part of the job to give good service, and at the same time, the hypocrisy of it all will be gone. And the reason that that's not going to happen is because government is in cahoots with big business. So government's not going to enact any laws that's going to hurt big business, and vice versa.
It went backwards.
Am I right on track?
It went backwards. They that's what I was just. But that's like government control. That's socialism, man. That's keeping a small amount of people in a very wealthy area, and everybody else underneath of them scurrying around trying to make a living. That's a tough deal.
Socialism would be where there is no guy at the top making all that money, where it is true, the money is truthfully filtered down to the working person.
You really believe that, man? Are you serious in what you're saying?
Well, what am I, Pollyanna? What are you saying?
Wait. Have you ever? Were you ever?
I'm Polly Bergen. What? Reincarnated.
Were you ever in Europe when the curtain was up?
No, I wasn't. I had the rare privilege to not go through that.
Okay. I've been in Germany. I've been in Germany before they took the wall down. East Germany, West Germany, right? I spent a lot of time in Germany. A lot of dear friends there, okay? And we did a lot of business in Germany. And the people that lived in East Germany didn't know how to take care of themselves because the government did everything for them. Everything. But they never reached any level of wealth anywhere because they only existed like a number.
Well, sometimes you have to redefine wealth. Wealth could be exposure to the arts, freedom to read a book.
Freedom. You hear what you just said?
Yeah, well, no question about it, but socialism doesn't preclude freedom. Communism precludes.
Well, communism and socialism are joining, walking down the street together, pal.
I so disagree with you.
Communism is only a small group.
We don't have enough time this morning for me and my blood pressure.
One day we'll get into that discussion.
We will, but I think that the basic trouble, the reason Bernie didn't get the nomination was because of Deborah Wasserman Schultz and the DNC. But the reason that that provoked them to do it is the misconception about socialism and the fact that socialism is further away from communism than you seem to think it is. So that will be fodder for our next get-together. How about that?
Next time we have a conversation, we'll explain Russia and the experiences I've had in Russia, okay? And other countries.
Look forward to hearing about it. And
other countries like that. You have to see things and you have to experience them and live there and walk around. And, a wise man called Meyer Lansky taught me something when I was a very young man. If I live in Philadelphia and I go to Detroit and I walk around in the shoes of a man in Detroit, they may speak a little bit funnier. They may eat a little funnier food. They may do certain things, but they're all the same in actuality when it comes to principle.
Okay.
Understand?
Between Philadelphia
and Detroit.
Detroit.
Clothes. They may wear different parts of the country. And I learned that they used to tell me, get on a plane and go here and go there and walk around the city. Walk around. Get involved in the people. And we'll give you people you can go see. And I did that. I'm probably one of 4 people in my era that ever went across the country and was introduced to every one of the Dons all across the country, personally.
Wow.
And in Europe as well. And went to different places and walked around places to see what the difference was in life. In Africa, in different places I went to find out just how people lived in reality. Not what you hear in the newspapers or what they tell you on the radio or television, but what really is there in life, in real life. Very few people ever really will tell you or the experiences they've had. Oh, man, I can't go there because it's really a treacherous place to go. Or, God, it's so beautiful, but, boy, it's not safe. Or this. You understand?
Hey, I've been to East Oakland. So don't tell me. Hey, Jack, I can make you laugh once in a while, and you seem to be enjoying this, so let's do it again in the real near future. How about that?
It's great talking to you, my friend. It really is.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for listening, everybody. I do have Gall, I got to admit. And it's the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Guest is Jack O'Halloran. And he's more than just a boxer. He's more than just a pug boxer. We'll be back again next time. Adios, everybody.
Oh, God.
The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.